Hello, everyone, and just around the corner, we've got summer, and what's better than playing around with an old school beat 'em up during summertime? So, today we'll be going over the Neo Geo or AS MVS versions of Mutation Nation. Mutation Nation was released in 1992 in the arcades, along with an AES version in April of 1992, a Neo Geo CD version in 1995 in Japan, and October of 1996 in America. It is actually also available on digital as well, and we're actually playing this game on the Neo Geo AES system. The gameplay itself is pretty straightforward. You get to choose from one or two players, either Ricky or Johnny, going through 6 different levels of fighting various mutated monsters in the year 20XX, which in some places online, I think they're calling it 2050. There is some gameplay changes. There's definitely spheres that you can pick up, which can be used for special attacks. The light sphere, which is basically a yellow with the letter A on it, is it's the fastest and does a lot of damages in the game. When you do use it, it's the player splits into bodies of light, then shoots off into different directions, much like Nightcrawler's special in the X-Men arcade game. The fire spear has a B onto it with a reddish color and basically launches a large explosion. The lightning sphere is a blue color with the letter C, and it is also one of the slower attacks in the game, but it does give the player that uses it a little bit of invincibility during the entire animation. Basically, the player jumps away off site and then lands, hitting and creating lightning bolts that goes off over the whole stage. The wind sphere is green and has the letter D. It does have the most powerful attack in the game, where basically the player turns into a tornado that goes around clearing the screen. The plot itself is pretty straightforward, and like most things, it's pretty much a throwaway. The fun part about this game is that, of course, it came out a little bit after Robo Army, but it does have its own unique gameplay choices, and the fact that the characters have large graphics, considering it's only 54 megabytes, so comparatively large for its time, but of course small for nowadays. It's amazing how much fun you can have with this game. It is, of course, like with any beat 'em up, a much better game when played along with a friend. The game was fairly largely forgotten in 1992 as beat 'em ups were kind of getting into its kind of death thrall, so to speak, during that time, with games such as Samurai Showdown, Street Fighter 2, and other fighting games really grabbing the attention of most arcade gamers. Mutation Nation, Robo Army, and like beat 'em ups really kind of faded away in regards to popularity in the arcades. That said, this game is still a fun beat 'em up to play. You can pick it up on the Switch as well, so it is just $7.99 there, and you can pretty much pick up physically for the AES anywhere between about $110 to maybe $180 online. Again, as per my past reviews, if you are going to pick it up, I do suggest picking it up from Japan, as generally most of the Japanese versions are lower priced versus their American AES counterparts, and they're usually in better shape. And I'm sure the Neo Geo fans among you, taking a look at Ricky, can see that he looks a lot like Kyo Kusanagi, and that design is not by accident. Basically, Ricky was an early take on Kyo, who of course became and was released for the King of Fighters series. So there's definitely some inspiration there, but he was eventually used for a different game. And as you can see, for one of the major things that really stands out about Mutation Nation is the excellent soundtrack and the graphics for the time. The graphics are very colorful. While there aren't a ton of different, say, animations in the background, they're nicely varied, and they're definitely unique for a post-apocalyptic kind of Hokuto no Ken style of gameplay, mixing with a little Toxic Crusader among them. And like most successful beat 'em ups, the controls are easy to learn, but a little bit harder to master. Thanks to the sphere system, it does take some planning and some knowledge of the levels to know the proper time and use of the specials, whether you do want to save it up to, kill a bunch of enemies on the screen or save it up for a possible boss later on in the level. And of course, Robo Army was released along the same time, and there's definitely some similarities between both, but the special attack for Mutation Nation is more of a jumping uppercut. Not quite a Shoryuken, but it looks interesting to say the least. Of course, still attack in the air, well, and also launch enemies in the air as well. Just mashing the attack button will extend a longer combo, and say like Final Fight or Double Dragon or games in that genre during that time. And one of the things that it does add to the beat 'em up genre, which X Men had as well, is the ability to hit opponents that are already down on the ground, which is pretty satisfying, especially if you're getting beat up by them. And one of the other standouts for this game is the soundtrack. Masahiko Hataka delivers a wonderful, vibrant soundtrack. Definitely fits the theme. It does get you thumping. I mean, it's not as good a soundtrack as say Street of Rage. I think by Yuzo Koshiro. I think honestly that is one of the best beat 'em up soundtracks of all time. I can't think of another game that has a better soundtrack, but this one will also definitely get your blood flowing. Now, the game itself does a lot of things very well. It definitely built upon the older games or older beat 'em ups like Double Dragon. Of course, Final Fight came out right around the same time, but it definitely had its own unique ideas and its own unique take to the beat 'em up genre. There's, of course, a lot of copycats that were released between 1991 through about 1994, where a lot of other companies released beat 'em ups, such as Konami with the Turtles and X-Men, through Capcom with its Final Fight series, and also later on with the D&D Shadows over Mysteria or any of those King of the Dragon series. But what I also loved really about Mutation Nation, Robo Army, Sengoku 1, 2, and 3 are the graphics. The characters are large, they take up a good portion of the screen, but not too large. They were pretty well animated for the time. The backgrounds weren't recycled. Of course, they did save memory by having different colors in regards to the enemies, but it was still basically the same enemy for the most part, so there were a variety of enemy types. But considering how big the sprites were for back in the day, that can be forgiven even nowadays. As I originally mentioned, you can pick this up also on the Switch for $7.99, and it's a nice little, kind of beat 'em up and play type of game. Great to play on the go. Honestly, you can't go wrong with purchasing any of these games over ACA on the eShop. I'm still hoping against hope to get a physical version or a physical cartridge for the Nintendo Switch. So ACA and SNK, if you're listening, please release a physical copy of all of the Neo Geo games on the Switch. Partner with Limited Run Games, partner with Pix and Love. We would love. I believe that I would not be the only one to say that we'd love to see a physical version with a reproduction of the old school Neo Geo case, even if it were shrunk down to say more like the Neo Geo Pocket case, to hold a physical version that fits the Switch for all of the ACA Neo Geo games. Then, depending on the price, if it were say $39.99 for a physical version for a standard Switch case, and then $59.99 for a replica but minute smaller versions like Neo Geo Pocket size case, I think it would still sell well. Now, however, if you're looking for a full size case and you're going to do collections, definitely would do it by genre and series and make it worth everybody's while. Personally, I would totally pay $59.99 for ACA physical versions of each singular title just to have a collection. But then again, I am a Neo Geo fan and would love that. So, of course, my decision might differ from a lot of folks who just want to pick it up as cheap as possible. But however you wish to do it, please definitely pick up the actual license copy. So we do want to show SNK and folks that there's still a lot of interest when it comes to these retro games. I know it's a lot easier to just emulate everything because you can get the ROMs for free, but I would hope that yourself, myself, and many others would also support the actual licensing of these old school games rather than just pirating them. That's again my only plea, only because I do want to see this still, be popular even nowadays and successful enough that they would think about maybe revisiting some of these games. Um, hopefully with a new twist with better graphics. But again, those are kind of just wishful thinking. Now, overall for this game, if I had to rate it for its time, a solid 7.5 out of 10. Now, if I were to rate it overall in the pantheon of beat 'em ups, every system included, it would rate lower only because, of course, other games like Streets of Rage 2, Streets of Rage 4 have really, developed a lot of the gameplay mechanics and the longevity of each title, and the replayability has been extended much, much later after this game was released. But still, for this day and age, if I had to rate it against all others, I would give it definitely a solid 6.5. Only a 7.5 from its time, only because, again, it's still pretty simple, even though there is some gameplay variability thanks to the different sphere effects or the magical special attacks that are very kind of shinobi esque in regards to their usage. So if you do see it on the Nintendo eShop on sale, even if you just mark it on your waitlist, completely worth the $4 to buy it as the ACA Switch. Now, if you're a Neo Geo collector such as myself, I think nowadays it's a little bit harder to justify the cost for a 54 meg cartridge for the higher increased cost of this. Back in the day when I purchased this game, I mean, I basically got it for about 90 bucks shipped, which you can't really do nowadays, unless it's in poor shape or you're just buying the cartridge only. And again, that's for the AES. You can definitely usually get the MVS cart games a bit cheaper. But still, definitely worth the pickup. It's if you're a retro gamer or a fan of beat 'em ups, it's still a very fun game to look back and see how far we've come. Again, thanks for watching this overview. Please like and subscribe.